All right.
Excuse
Good
me.
morning and welcome to Are You Serious? My name is Shimako. With me is my co host, Alex. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning.
And today, our guest is the illustrious, the amazing Mr. Hy Thurman. Good morning, Hy.
Good morning. How are you?
We are doing well. Thank you for asking.
Good.
Um, let's just get right into this.
All right.
So, the first thing we wanted to sort of bring to the table, you are uh, the president of, and also I believe the founder of, the North Alabama School for Organizers. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about how that whole project kicked off, and what are the short and the long term goals of this organization?
Well, it came about actually about 3 years ago. I've been organizing since I was 17, actually, and one of the things that I've noticed is, there's short-term organizers, and they're short-term a lot of times because they don't have the resources that they need, or they could be in a different role of organizing. When for instance, they might be good at finance, but they're trying to be boots on the ground, all the time, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So people need to organizers need to figure out what role they're in, and what capacity they're in within their organization. And so I had seen a lot of attrition there in people getting involved and then getting frustrated, dropping out, burned out, and I also saw many organizations doing that too. And so, in talking with some people here, and I'm in Huntsville, Alabama, which is a tough market to get into organizing, because this is definitely Trump country in here.
Yeah.
And so we started talking about, well, let's put together a curriculum, let's put together some programs, let's put together some things that we could talk about in terms of organizing and community organizing. And so we came out basically with a format of what people would want, I think, and part of it is to educate, to organize, because we feel that an organizer must be educated toward their community and their subject. And so we started putting together a reading list. We started putting together some classes, and one of the classes, that the first one actually I taught, which was sustaining and maintaining community coalitions and organizers, in which we went through about 18 different roles of organizers, and many of them that were in the class, and there were around 30 people in the class, and this was pre-COVID, so we can get together and actually do some teaching in the classroom. I figured out that, hey, I might be good at a couple of things, or I may not be good at some of these things. So let's see where I fit. And so from that, we got together and did the class, and a lot of them found out that, they should move to another position. What we also did was took an organization that was falling apart and rebuilt it from the ground up, and allowed them to use their organizing skills to help that organization. And that organization is functioning now. And we also brought in other resources because we wanted to talk about people's culture and history. And so we're doing a lot of concentration on the Native American community. And we have a professor from Tennessee Tech that comes in and teaches a lot about that. We also work with the University of Alabama, Huntsville, in classes in political science, and we've done classes around the 7 steps of nonviolent protest by Dr. King, and we have a mock Congress, and we work on that and talk a lot about the capitalist system and imperialism that exists here in the United States with the United States government. And so we are, I guess some people would say progressive, but others would say we're definitely revolutionary in what we're trying to do. But we also understood that we also had some political education from the Black Panthers, new African Black Panthers. I run what's called fireside chats, and I think I've interviewed about 30 people doing what you're doing now. And we're putting it on YouTube, and we're building a library of that. And we also believe that, taken from the original Rainbow Coalition and the Black Panthers back in the 60s, you have to have survival programs. So we had survival programs pending revolution. And so what we actually have now, we put together some programs very needed in the community, one of which is a free automotive repair, in which we repair people's cars and service cars, because a lot of people can't even get to work and they can't get to their doctor's appointments or whatever. And we've actually given away a car and getting more, but we do fundraising through that and gifts by another organization we have with Nassau. It's called Blues to Bluegrass. And so we have different styles and genres of music, and we have benefits to raise money for various organizations. And we're having one on the 25th to raise money for the free automotive clinic. And we have, I don't know, I think about 8 different bands lined up. And so we do that. And we also do what's called the Homeless Construction Coalition, in which we get, pallets and materials from businesses. And we actually build platforms for the homeless people to put their tents on, because when it rains, a lot of them can lose whatever they have. So we do that, as well as, their pets. We'll build one for them too, and wheelchair ramps, that type of thing. At the same time, it gives the opportunity to get in and find out what people need through these programs, and then we can refer them, or we can take care of some of these ourselves. Just most recently, last weekend before last, we were co-sponsors of the first Huntsville Human Rights Film Festival. This was a 5-day festival of films and presentations. So we've been involved in that. We'll do that again next year. But what we tried to do with the film festival is to bring the University of Alabama here and the community together, because there'd been some friction within them, the two within the community. And I think it pretty well accomplished its goal. So that's and with the Nassau, as we call it, we welcome the community to come in and do classes if they want. We've had a number of other classes, and we worked with the Poor People's Coalition, Poor People's Army. They all do classes, to reach out. And basically, it's an organization that we are a 501c3, so we can be fiscal sponsor of a number of different organizations. And so we invite them in. I think the most recent one we're doing is United Women of Color, which is a very big organization here, working with young females, and so that's, we invite people in to do this kind of stuff too. And also, as a part of this, we are a part of what was called the Second Rainbow Coalition, in which we've been very instrumental in organizing um, I, as being one of the elders, being an advisor to them, an organizer, uh, it's living the legend of the original Rainbow Coalition. And we have several organizations involved and more joining because it's a new area. Young Lords and the New African Black Panther Party, White Panthers. We have AIM and the Poor People's Army, as well as Surge, showing up for racial justice, uh, and feminist organization called Fury. And so we get people together and we'll try to form these coalitions and help form these coalitions, and these are very workable organizations right now. So I guess in a nutshell, that's what we do. I mean, there's a lot of other things that we do, but that's the sort of the highlights of what we're doing here in Huntsville, Alabama. So we're trying to open Alabama up to more progressives, more revolutionaries, and I think it's finally beginning to make some headway here.
Alex, do you want to take the next question?
Sure. Yeah, I'm curious what when you first became political, if we can do kind of an oral history type question.
Okay. Well, actually, you can find out too in my book called Revolutionary Hillbilly. But you see, I was a part of a migrant circle from the South going to Chicago back in the 60s and 70s. I'm from a small town in Tennessee. We were raised, in poverty. My family were sharecroppers. And so basically, when I got a chance to get out, I was 17. I left and went to Chicago because I'm an older brother, and I became political there because he was somewhat involved with. Well, he was partial leader of a gang called the Peacemakers, but he had gravitated toward Students for a Democratic Society and come into the community and set up what was called Jobs or Income Now, but found out that there were many more problems in the uptown community than just jobs. And so he got involved there and actually led the first march on the police station for police brutality. And then I came and got involved, and really got involved because of police brutality within the community when I was struck and beaten by Chicago police, and just the whole living conditions that were in the uptown community at the time drew a lot of us together and formed many different organizations. And what we formed was the Young Patriots. And we weren't all that political. We had to learn, to go along. And tell you the truth, most of us we didn't have a childhood, and we didn't, we didn't have much schooling. So we didn't have the knowledge of organizing or anything like that maybe some of the other students did or other people did, because most of us had reading issues, and so we would learn from just other people, the TV and that type of thing. But we knew what was going on in our community, and we were going to fight to try to help the community. And we were kids. We really didn't know what we were doing, but we took our lead actually from the Black Panther Party, and more at the Young Lords was also doing it too, a Hispanic organization. And so we developed our 11-point program out of the Black Panthers as a way of a similarity, what do we have in common, that type of thing. So that's where I kind of got political, was just through, um, through the repression of the community and just the brutality of the police and the system that, treated us as very insignificant, you know, and subhuman actually. So it was tough, but some of us decided to stick out, and do it. We were asked, well, why didn't you just go back home? Couldn't go back home because there's really nothing there to go back to. And so we were stuck. And if we went on, in the migrant circle, like up to Detroit or around to Cincinnati, Indianapolis, it would have been the same, So it was hard for us to get jobs. It was hard for us to really make a living for a lot of people. So we decided we would stay and fight. And then the Panthers heard about us, and we were at a meeting and I think it was just overbooked in one of these communities, basically middle class, upper middle class folks that like to sit around and talk about and learn, about what you're doing, but not really help you out at all. But they just, that's a way for them to get around and, and show that they care. So what happened was, it was overbooked. We had the Black Panthers there, and we were there also. And here we are trying to get money for the community, uptown community, and basically being crapped on by these people. Because most of our families were welfare recipients, and therefore they were, lazy and didn't want to work and all that stuff. But that was the thinking. And so, they hit us pretty hard. But then an organizer named Bobby Lee got up from the Panthers and defended us. And since that time was the formation of the Rainbow Coalition. There was a film group. It's called the Film Group in Chicago that was doing some commercials at the time with Howard Hawk. Howard Hawk was the founder, one of the founders of Second City, and he'd done a number of different documentaries. Bob Dylan, he did some on the Panthers, and so they heard about this meeting. They said, "Now wait a minute, you got a bunch of black people and you got a bunch of hillbillies. How is this going to happen?" And they actually brought in their camera and started filming, and so it turned out to be a documentary called American Revolution 2. And that showed the coalition between, the Black Panthers and the Southern people, because Bobby Lee, he was in charge of North Side Chicago. Fred Hampton had appointed him to do that. And so he came up and started hanging out with us for a few weeks. And then he went back and said to Fred Hampton, "Hey, these crazy hillbillies up here on the north side, so they're running around with this Confederate flag, but at the same time, they're preaching revolution and unity." He said, and Hampton said, "Wow, that maybe it's what we need, in terms of fulfilling a coalition for revolution." So long story short, that's how I became political. Okay. And I had done some other things in the community, like I helped start the first drug abuse program in the community. We had other organizations that we were working with in housing. We were fighting urban renewal, which brought a lot of us together. And you look at it as gentrification, but back then, the city of Chicago wanted to gentrify all the communities, and Uptown was certainly one of them. And so they they had plans to build a community college, which is there now, Truman College, right in the area where most of the Southern people lived, and there were up to 40,000 people from the South there at any given time. And so we got together with some other organizations and came up with an alternative people's village. And we had architects, and we drew out, the plans, and so it would be a village where people would, come to, because we would have people migrating or coming into the city, poor folks, because we would have a hotel that we would build, to house them. We had our own employment agency. Of course, we had our own breakfast program for kids and food pantries through the Young Patriots, and we had our free health clinic. So we had legal services that we had helped set up, and this was all through volunteers. And so, it was called the best housing program that never was. Eventually became known as the Hank Williams Village, because Hank Williams is a very famous country singer, and so it went along with it, with the culture. And but it would have all those facilities and have its own governing, and the powers to be, would not let us sit on their committees in the city because they said we weren't landowners, so we shouldn't have any rights. So we actually took over some of their meetings. Excuse me, disrupted a lot of their meetings, and so they had said that if we came up with funding, they would very seriously take a look at it, and we did. We came up with over $250,000 at the time, and came up with developers and banks, and a lot of just financial institutions that said this is a very workable model program, and we should do it. Well, in the end, they didn't. They ended up putting the college there, and that's when it basically dispersed. The Southern people put us on the road again. So. But of course, we were involved in a lot of other fights with the city at that time about health services and police brutality and welfare recipients' rights, all of that. And our clinic actually collected over 3,000 specimens of urine to test people for various types of illnesses, in which the Board of Health turned down. Wouldn't help us, but we did. We accomplished it. We got together and worked with churches and schools, and actually it had a way of, it saved a lot of people's lives, what it did. But the powers that be in Chicago, the dictatorship of Mayor Daley, they declared war on gangs. They were, brutalizing us. They were killing us. Several of our people were killed, and that led to the police march and other things, and they had beaten a lot of us, and the bad cops were always put in what they considered the dangerous neighborhoods, which was any poor neighborhood, and there was and everything was segregated. I mean, we were, in a lot of ways, with what we did, with help get, Harold Washington, first black mayor elected. He ran on the Rainbow Coalition panel platform and got elected. And so we were chipping away at this segregation. And it did. I mean, it actually did work. And they say that this coalition is responsible for changing politics, not only in Chicago, but around the country. And it kind of died out because of the repression after Fred Hampton was murdered. A lot of us were targets, and so a lot of us had to actually go underground. We had to leave for a while. The new documentary, it's out this last couple of years, called First Rainbow Coalition, explains all that, where they take a lot of us old timers and interview us and then show what it was like back then. And PBS ran it for a year, and but that type of, it was that type of organizing because we weren't interested in joining anything that the city was doing. They tend to draw us in and compromise us like they did some of the other organizations and even gangs. And we said, no, we don't want any part of that. We want the freedom of the people. We want people to be self-determined. We want people to be able to, organize in our own community. We want jobs. We want, health care. We want proper education, because when a kid from the South would come up, they would automatically put them back 1 or 2 grades because they didn't think that we had the capability of learning. But they never did any testing for lead poisoning or any other chemicals that probably washed down into and it did, not probably, but it did wash down into the water table, the water streams of the South from the mines and strip mining. And all those chemicals, it does cause some type of learning disability. And so we were fighting the Board of Education at the same time. We were, we had battles going on all fronts. So they had COINTELPRO, FBI came in with the counterintelligence program that they had used in the 50s during the McCarthy era and all that, and classified all of us as a threat to national security. And so I saw a list of COINTELPRO and the FBI and the list of people that were considered to be a danger to her security. Even Albert Einstein. I said, I'm in pretty good damn company here now. Of course, Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, everybody else is there. But yeah, we had a lot of false charges, imprisoned. There was a black site there at that time. People would disappear. And so that, that in itself was a battle. I mean, we were constantly battling. The draft board was connected with the city. One of our members named Tom Malaire was arrested at one of our demonstrations, anti-war demonstrations, Vietnam. And they misspelled his name in the newspaper. They put him down as Tom Lamar. 2 days later, he got a draft. 2 weeks later, he got a draft notice in that name. So they were all connected, in there too. So one of the ways that they would try to bust things up is just draft the people, the young men into it. Cops were extremely terrible. They've been known to rape women. They had a apartment that they would go to and take women there, for sex. The community itself had been busted back in 1959 for the Great Somerdale Scandal, in which a detective arrested a burglar and decided, well, I'm not going to take him in. He's going to be my personal burglar. And so the next thing you know, the police district, they had several people that they would force to be burglars. And so anytime they wanted something, they would go to them and say, hey, I'm having this barbecue, go steal me these steaks, or, my daughter's getting married, I need this gift, or whatever. And then an FBI, for some reason, an FBI agent ran up on one of these burglars and opened up a case that uh, that actually terminated the job of the police commissioner, and 8 cops went to jail. And then even at that point, the FBI had to go into this detective's house and actually take a ring off his wife's finger that he'd given her that had been stolen. But there are all kinds of things going on. We had an occasion where myself and 2 other male patriots and a female patriot got stopped by the cops, and cops came down and said, took the driver, Bobby McGinnis, back to the car, and held up a bag of pills and said, we're going to charge you guys with having these pills. And obviously it was a plant, and they said, but didn't exactly use these kinds of words, but they said, if we can have sex with a girl, we'll let you go. And then by that time, another patrol car came up, and we said, oh boy. And Bobby McGinnis was driving. He came back and he says, we're getting the hell out of here. So we had to get into a police chase just to get away from them. And that's the way they were. A woman came into the joint office, SDS office, and said, I just got raped by a cop. And so, it was just unbelievably crazy. And I was busted along with a couple of other patriots up in Rock Island, Illinois. We had went to show this film, American Revolution 2, and at the university. And then that night we went to a party, which we didn't know was a setup. And only, one student knew about it. The others were just interested in learning about us. And so as we left, we were arrested and detained at the county jail. And the charge was burglary. And they said that they found a collector's coin in the back of the police car. Obviously we stole from there. And plus there was a white bag of powder that obviously was heroin or something. So they were testing on that. So about, early, I don't know, maybe it was 12 midnight or 1 or something. They brought us in one at a time, and there were 2 FBI agents and the county sheriff. And they were telling us, well, you're serious. This is serious. You're going to go to jail for life now because you got these drugs and burglary and all this stuff. So, but we got a way out of that if you can just work with us. And they were trying to get us to be informants. So we said, screw you. We don't interested in, any of your shit, So as our lawyer got there, he said, you either charge them or, we're going to do a false arrest charge on you. And then they let us go. And they said, by the way, we've done testing on this powder and we can't figure out what it is. And we said, well, it happens to be dog, flea, and tick powder, and they were testing it for heroin and everything else. So, but what happened was, because of that, about 5 years ago, I said, well, I'm going to get a gun permit. Let's see what they do. And I went down here in Alabama, and they turned me down, of course. And they said I had arrest records, arrests from Rock Island for burglary, and one from Chicago for assault. And so I said, well, I don't think so, because we weren't supposed to even be charged with that. And anyway, we were charged a lot of different times, but all of the times they had to be dropped because there was no proof. And so I got an affidavit from these two, from Chicago and from Rock Island, and they didn't have any record of it, but the FBI did. And so the FBI had left it on that we were arrested for burglary and that I was arrested for, assault. And so I fought it and got the gun permit. But in order to change, and then I have to go to court trying to get it changed. But that's a lot of people were falsely charged. One of our older men was involved in a lot of community organizing, and he went down south and where he was from in Georgia and started talking to people about racial equality, and well, he was killed. We had another one that went back to West Virginia and wanted to open up a clinic. He was killed. I just wrote a poem about the older guy, John Howard. It's called A Southern Revolutionary and the Rednecks. A poem for John Howard. He grew up with them. He was like them. He was one of them. They knew him. He moved away. He was like them. They knew him. He was one of them. He came back. He was different from them. They knew him, but he was not one of them. When he spoke of equality of all people, they knew him, but he was no longer one of them. Only silence when he spoke. They were not like him. They knew him. He was not one of them. They were not like him, so they killed him. He was found with his throat cut, and he was targeted by some of the people as saying, "There's that in-lover, communist from Chicago." I personally was beaten by cops. I know other people that, my friends that were actually killed by cops, but it was like war. It's just like the government just opened up war on the poor people, and not exaggerating. It's just unbelievable, what poor people had to go through during those days. Starving, I had to sell blood, to survive, and so did a lot of other people. And there were these day labor agencies that you'd get jobs at, and you'd have to pay off the management some of your, salary, which your money, which wasn't very much at all. And so, I'm not saying that the Young Patriots were squeaky clean. Okay, we were not. We knew the street. We worked on the street. We knew how to hustle. To sell drugs. We knew how to, we knew how to survive.
Organizations from the streets are rarely going to be that clean.
No, we're
part of what comes with the streets,
Yeah, exactly. And then you got to survive somehow. So you band together and see how you can survive. So there are all kinds of deals made. There are all kinds of outside influences, all that stuff. But we were trying to protect ourselves as much as we decided we wanted to protect the community. And so I don't know, I guess, I've asked myself this question over and over about why me or why that particular group of people at the time decided to do what we did. And we did, I guess, because we had no other choice. We were forced to do that because the Mayor Daley and the Chicago police, as well as anywhere around the country, are responsible for formations of gangs and for organizations to fight against them, and they just don't seem to understand that. And I know with Mayor Daley, he wanted conflict because he could use, statistically, crime, but at the same time stating there was no crime, but he would use it as a way of statistics to get more money, for the city. And so he would have instigators. There were instigators that would instigate all kinds of problems, and there were, they would pay off one group to fight or start problems with another group and all that. But we were also, now that our records were sealed for like 40 years at the History Museum in Chicago after Fred Hampton's murder, and the FBI and the Chicago police were found guilty in 2 civil suits. And so they actually hid all of our information away, and no one could get to it because they wanted to make sure that, some of these people that, especially, the FBI and Chicago police and others that were involved in it, that they had probably passed away at that time, and it would be too late also to prosecute anyone else. So everything in there had been redacted. You can't read much of it, but we have been able to find other FBI, memos directly from J. Edgar Hoover to the field office and the field office to him directly about our activities, and him stating in his own words, there's a Messiah rising up in Chicago and needs to be neutralized. Well, that was Fred Hampton. And he also had mentioned in a memo that there were one from the field office to Hoover, that the Black Panthers are recruiting like-minded individuals and organizations, and they specifically named the Young Patriots and the Young Lords. And we were targeted all the time. I remember some cops beating on my door apartment, and I'm saying, "Who's there?" And they said, Chicago police, and then they put a key in and opened the door. How can you live that way? I mean, they got a key to your apartment. They know everything you're doing. Just complete harassment all the time.
How did you live that way? I mean, that stuff's like,
yeah.
I mean, it wears on you after a while, no matter how strong of a person you are, right?
Yeah, some of it was drugs and some alcohol, but no. I mean, we had a way of coping. But no, we had it because we believed. We had a strong belief that, first of all, we didn't have a childhood, so we didn't know anything about being very happy as a youth. And so basically the only thing that we knew was survival. But we also knew that we were not in any way going to be, stopped because of our beliefs. I mean, we would literally go to war because of our beliefs with them and the cops. And there's some things I can't talk about, but there's some things that happened. So the more it intensified, it kept intensifying because of the harassment. And we could have turned around and left, but we didn't. We said, where are we going to go? We may even welcome other communities, especially with the Southern people. There a series of articles came out calling us incestuous, murderers, thieves. To watch your daughters around us. It's called. It's like influx of locusts taking over with these stupid people. Well, and that's the way we were looked at in other communities. So we had to band together. And there was a lot of alcoholism, a lot of drugs. There were just all kinds of things. But the way that we coped is by with each other, actually. And we got the community organizations, a lot of them behind us, so we knew that we were doing something important. And so that was basically the way that we coped. But when they started murdering people, like Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, Manuel Ramos, a number of other people, and even our people. The Young Lords, for instance, in the Lincoln Park area, they were very, very active, and we supported them. And the way that the Rainbow Coalition worked was there was never supposed to have been a leader. Fred Hampton was became outspoken. That's how he was identified as a leader, because it was supposed to have been not an organization. It was a concept, okay, that you get all these organizations and people together, and then if, for instance, everybody was equal, and for instance, if the Black Panthers or the Young Lords or American Indian Movement or any others that became a part of the coalition at that time needed the Young Patriots to demonstrate or do whatever, we would go join them, but we would no longer be a Young Patriot. We would be a Black Panther. We would be a Young Lord, or we would be a member of the American Indian Movement or others. And we would take the orders from them. We would not in any way try to change what they were doing, because we believed that, in unity there was power, and that since we were, we were a part of the Rainbow Coalition, that's what we were. We were the coalition. And so they would do the same for us, and that's when Mayor Daley declared war on gangs. And, that was another turning point where they were harassing and killing people, and,
right.
But that's the way the concept worked. And we relied on each other. We were all a brotherhood. Of course, when the Rainbow Coalition first came together, there were some Panthers that couldn't handle it. They left. There were some Patriots that couldn't handle it because they were still so racist. And there were some of the Young Lords and others. But those that stayed, made a commitment to unity. And so we really did rely on each other, for brother sisterhood and, and camaraderie,
We got time for about one more question. Alex, did you want to ask the last question you had? I thought that was a really good question.
Sure. Yeah. I'm curious why you think the Young Patriots have been so forgotten.
Well, that was a deliberate plan. Okay. The powers to be didn't want to show a coalition at that time that there would possibly be white people. They were okay with SDS, Students for Democratic Society, or something like that. But when it came to, Southern hillbillies, that's supposed to be racist, supposed to be white supremacist, they did not want to show that coalition. And so they deliberately, they being the powers that be, I guess the FBI, Chicago Police, City of Chicago, whoever, decided to cut us out of a lot of the things that we help support in these organizations, because they didn't want that concept that there could actually be hillbillies working with blacks and Hispanics. It just didn't seem right. It never happened. And so in Chicago, especially because Chicago was a part of segregation, they didn't let anybody get together. They didn't want anybody to get together. They had their tokens, but that was it. And that's the reason. They just didn't want to recognize us. And we weren't really recognized until James Tracy came out with Hillbilly Nationalist book, and he's the one that actually he and Jacoby Williams, who did a book called From the Bullet to the Ballot, brought out the Young Patriots as a part of the actual movement. Back in those days, that's been forgotten. And so from there, it kind of sparked people's interest, and that's where it came from. They just didn't want people to know that kind of coalition existed, because back in those days, you're looking what was happening in Alabama, you're looking what was happening in Mississippi. Those were days of rage. But it's okay white people be involved, but it's not okay for specific white people to be involved, like hillbillies working with black people. They didn't want that.
All right. Wow, that's a solid note to end on. All right, we really appreciate your time today.
Sure.
We should promote the book. We got to promote the book. You have a copy of the book?
Yeah.
Tell folks where to get it.
Here it is.
Boom.
That's my copy, though.
Revolutionary Hillbilly. And where can folks purchase the book?
Oh, they can get it through Regent Press in Oakland, or they can get it on Amazon, eBay. Major bookstores can order it. So now's a good time to get it, because they're selling a lot of the used copies too.
I have a copy. I'll be honest, I haven't got my chance to read it yet, but I bought the copy immediately after meeting you. So
there you go. Yeah, well, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, Alex, any final notes?
No, just thank you so much for talking to us.
Well, thank you for having me. We got to keep it going. It's not a movement if it's not moving.
That's right. You either growing or you're dying.
That's right.
You're dying.
All right, y'all. Till next time. People. See ya.